You're listening to Emerson Whitner's NXT Report on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
From the Wrestling Outsiders Podcast global headquarters all the way into your living room, this is the Wrestling Outsiders Podcast for Wednesday, October 7th, 2015. I am, of course, your host, the one and only Emerson Whitner. Welcome to episode 91. It is the final 10 episodes to episode number 100, coming up the first Wednesday in December. We've got a show for you that night, but that's 9 weeks away. But until then, we've got NXT to talk about. Again, I am Emerson Whitner. I'm flying solo tonight. We'll return next week with a brand new episode, along with our guest host of the week, when we talk about next week TLC 2010. You could really call it the end of the Nexus angle, with John Cena versus Wade Barrett in a chairs match, along with the last real-time Edge won the world title in a TLC match with Kane, Alberto Del Rio, and Rey Mysterio. But that's next week. But for now, tonight, we're talking TakeOver, plus a little bit later on, I'm going to do a quick rundown of the Madison Square Garden show, along with the TNA Bound for Glory show, actually. And if I think about it and if I have time, I'll complain about my new job. I do want to thank everyone listening right now at AngryMarks.com. They were listening to us on a tape delay. It should be not bright and early Thursday morning when you hear me, or Thursday afternoon, either way. But let's jump into this TakeOver show, shall we? Overall, the show was pretty good. The main event, got out of your way to see. The rest of the show was solid. Like I reported on WrestlingObserver.com when I did my preview of the show, I said it's going to be a quick 2.5 hours. It'll fly by, and it'll leave you wanting more, which is more than you can ever say when watching Raw. If you watched the show, you did not feel like you wasted your time, and I guarantee you enjoyed yourself for those 2 hours and about 15 minutes or so that it aired. But first of all, they kicked the show off with the two semifinal matches in the Dusty Rhodes Classic, the first being Finn Balor and Samoa Joe versus Dash and Dawson. As I predicted, Dash and Dawson had absolutely no chance of winning. I don't think anyone thought they had a chance. But, they got a lot of offense and it looked really good during this match. They teased the finish 3 minutes in. They did two heat segments in both Balor-Joe matches. This first one, they got the heat on Joe. Joe got the tag to Balor, who immediately got cut off. Balor almost actually won at one point on the coup de grace like 3 minutes into the match, but Dawson distracted him. So Dash, in the key point of the show, Dash clipped Finn Balor's knee, and so Balor sold it the entire night. And they worked on his knee the entire match. I want to point out a little subtle thing that the announcers never pointed out. When they were working over Samoa Joe in the early part of the match, Finn was reaching for the tag, but he got knocked off the apron, but he immediately jumped back on to get the tag. However, a few minutes later, when Finn was crawling towards the corner and Joe got knocked off the apron, instead of jumping back up, Joe ran around the ring and chased Dawson all over the place. But eventually, Joe did, of course, get the hot tag and destroyed both men. He went for the Muscle Buster on Wilder, and Finn insisted on tagging himself in so he could hit the coup de grace, which ended up hurting his knee more. So the announcers debated how stupid that was, but it was what it was. And the babyfaces, the only babyface team in the tournament left, picked up the win to move to the finals. And they faced the winner of our second match, Jason Jordan and Chad Gable versus Baron Corbin and Rhino. Battle between two heel teams. The highlight of the match, I thought, was the fans chanting, Among other things, they chanted, "Save the Gable, save the Gable." And they also chanted Gable to the tune of Kurt Angle's WWF theme, which the announcers acknowledged that the fans were going crazy for Chad Gable, but of course they weren't going to point out the tune that they were chanting his name to. Gable gave Rhino an armbar around the top rope at one point, which caused Baron Corbin to freak out, and it somehow made him a better wrestler. Corbin had the match won with a big boot, but the referee was distracted by Jason Jordan on the apron. There wasn't a real heat segment, as both teams got an equal amount of offense during the match. Rhino at one point missed the top rope splash, so Jordan tagged in and went wild. Jordan and Gable went for their big move, but Corbin got out of it and hit a black hole slam for a 2 count. Chad Gable gave Baron Corbin Doug Williams' old Chaos Theory suplex, which just looked crazy. But then Corbin won with the End of Days. Both semifinal matches were good. I was a little surprised going with Corbin and Rhino because this is NXT, and usually they go out of their way to make sure that the matches with the best match quality happen on the Takeover shows. And the Jordan Gable match would have been better, but Corbin and Rhino were the bigger name team. But both matches were fine, and they set up the finals very good. Easy for me to say. I speak English good. They set up the finals. Kevin Nash was shown sitting in the second row. I should point out that not even Kevin Nash will pay for a front row seat. Asuka debuted next versus Dana Brooke. Emma was in the corner of Dana, and before the match even began, the fans were chanting that Asuka's gonna kill you. Asuka, to be the sportswoman that she is, she offered a handshake, but Dana turned it down, and the murder was on. Asuka had her in a hammerlock for quite a while, and when Dana finally got out of it, she hauled off and slapped her in the face, causing the fans to chant, "You effed up" at her. Dana went for another slap, but Asuka took her down and stretched her on the mat. They got the heat. Well, I say they because Dana got the heat when Asuka was on the apron and Emma hooked the ring apron, the physical ring apron, around Asuka's feet, which distracted her, so Dana took over. But Asuka fought back. She put on so many different submissions, including a flying arm bar. Eventually, she gave Emma a spinning back fist. Actually, she gave Dana a spinning back fist and tapped her out with... No, she did. I apologize. I wrote it correctly, said it correctly, and then corrected myself. She gave Emma the spinning back fist and then tapped Dana out with the crossface chicken wing, which they called the Asuka lock. After the match, Dana tried attacking Asuka again and got a spin kick to the mouth. Why can't I speak tonight? I don't know. And then Asuka stared down Emma, and Emma couldn't even look at her, and she walked away. They were really pushing Finn Balor's knee injury before the finals, so that was a big deal throughout the show. And they also showed the video package. After 8 weeks, Nia Jax is finally arriving next week for her debut match in NXT. Personally, she went to all those different arenas. She hit the ECW arena. She went to do Burns Arena in Baltimore and the Davis Arena and the Impact Zone. She kept going to the wrong places, and someone finally pointed her in the right place. So she's going to be in Full Sail next Wednesday night on the award-winning WWE Network for NXT. And so that led us to Tyler Breeze versus Apollo Crews. This match, in my mind, ended up being like the second best match on the show. And I knew it had the chance of either being second or third best. But in my mind, it was the second best. Tyler did not come out with the models like he did in the last two takeovers. And Tyler at one point broke out the sharpshooter, which, because he's Canadian, spoiler alert, he's really Canadian, it's the law that all Canadians do the sharpshooter. Cruz flipped over Breeze at one point and got hit with a supermodel kick for a near fall. Breeze went for a crossbody from the top rope, but Cruz caught him and turned it into a power slam for the 2 count. Cruz hit his gorilla press, but Breeze grabbed his leg, and then when Cruz kicked him off and went for the moonsault, Breeze got his knees up and used a small package and almost got the win, but he got kicked in the face eventually by Cruz, and Cruz won with a spinning power bomb that looked actually a lot like John Cena's sit-out power bomb doohickey. WrestleMania tickets are on sale November 6th, so fair warning, if you want to sit with me at WrestleMania, just let me know, and I'll even let you buy the tickets. That led us to the Dusty Rhodes Classic Tournament Finals. 16 teams, 32 men, 6 weeks. It came down to just 2 teams. Samoa Joe and Finn Balor versus Baron Corbin and Rhino. Remember the days way back when a babyface would have a pre-match injury and it was there basically so you had the story of the babyface fighting from underneath, and it was always a much bigger deal when the babyface won because he fought back from this grueling injury and he looked good because of it. Nowadays, all they use it as a crutch, so when the babyface loses, he has an excuse. The heel gets nothing out of it because he beat a broken man, and the face gets nothing out of it because he's stupid enough to still wrestle injured and lose. However, NXT, it always baffles me because even though it's NXT and Triple H is in charge of it, it's still WWE, and you always expect WWE booking because it is a WWE show, and to expect when Finn Balor comes out with a knee injury that he's going to valiantly fight, but he's going to get taken out and beaten in the end. But he wasn't. This time they did the heat segments. They got the heat on Joe again, and Balor tagged in, and the first spot Balor did, actually, both heels were in the ring. Baron Corbin was on his hands and knees, and Finn Balor ran across the ring, jumped off of Corbin's back, and attacked Rhino. Balor ran wild for a little bit before Rhino clipped his knee from behind, and the heels took over. Balor was able to finally scratch and claw and fight and bite, and he got to the corner, tagged Joe in, and Joe went nuts, hitting all of his moves on both men. Rhino hit Joe with a gore, but Balor broke it up. Balor kicked Corbin out of the ring. Rhino kicked Balor out of the ring. Joe avoided the gore, set him up for the muscle buster. Balor came back onto the apron, tagged himself in. Joe hit the muscle buster. Balor came out for the coup de grace, and we have tournament champions in Finn Balor and Samoa Joe, continuing their slow build to one of their eventual heel turns and championship match, if not later this year, then early next year. After the match, Cody and Dustin Rhodes came out. Cody's wife was there. Their mother was there, who was Dusty's wife, of course, and both of their sisters, Dusty's daughters, and they were there to present the trophy. The trophy, the base of it is similar to the Andre the Giant trophy, but as you move up, they've got like a crystal version of Dusty's boots inside of it, and it builds its way up into like a cup up top. Cody cut this great promo, and why is Cody Rhodes not allowed to be Cody Rhodes? I know he did an interview somewhere talking about it would be better for him to be Stardust. It really wouldn't be, but Cody talked about how John Wayne was Dusty's hero, and he died the same exact day Dusty did. And Cody said that what we can do is remember and respect the dream, and that tonight everyone in the arena, they're all Rhodes. The fans chanted Rhodes while the American Dream theme played, and that was it. At this point, it was 9:30, and we still had a 30-minute Iron Man match to go. So, needless to say, this show was going past 10 o'clock. And I can't complain because the main event we got was more than worth it. A 30-minute Iron Man match for the NXT Women's Championship. Bayley defending against Sasha Banks. Bayley looked like she was ready to cry already when she walked out. The match was slow for the first 10 minutes. They didn't even lock up for a full minute. And even then they broke it and spent another minute just walking around. After that, they did reverse some roll-ups, kept going for both women looking for one pinfall after another, but neither being successful at it. Bayley blocked the bank statement. Sasha blocked the belly to Bayley. A spot early that I thought would play into later on in the match. Bayley dropped Sasha on top of her head with a DDT, but they kind of shrugged it off. Bayley helped her up, and they hugged, and Sasha immediately threw her down, which kind of played into later when Bayley was being a lot more aggressive and a lot more not Bayley, for lack of a better word. Sasha tried to win the first fall with her feet on the ropes, but the referee caught her. They then did a series of spots where they both almost ran into the referee, who was in the corner. Sasha stood up on the bottom rope, so she was actually taller than the referee, and gave Bayley a thumb to the eye and pinned her 8.5 minutes in to take the first fall. She had the lead for a very little amount of time. Bayley got tied it up at 10:52 when Sasha was on the middle rope. Bayley yanked her down by the foot right into a belly-to-Bayley suplex to tie it up at 1. Bayley then, the big swing of the match, and probably where it really picked up here, Bayley went for the move outside the ring, kind of like Sami Zayn's tornado DDT, only Bayley would do a drop kick. But Bayley was running down the outside of the ring and tried to do a drop kick over the apron of the ring through the other side, but Sasha caught her and swung her headfirst into the steps, similar to, when I think of it, I always think of when Samoa Joe did it to AJ Styles in that one TNA match, where he just swung AJ into the barricade. So it was like that. Sasha continued to work on Bayley outside the ring, working on Bayley's knee, working on her hand, because if you remember, Bayley broke her hand back in May or June, and she was out for a few months. Sasha literally ran Bayley all the way up the aisle and threw her into the LED board. The LED board, for effect, just went out the rest of the night. And Sasha made it back to the ring. Bayley did not. So Bayley was counted out at 14 minutes into the match. So Sasha was up 2-1. And in one of those spots that you could never recreate, because you'd have to trust a small child to really act this way, Sasha stole Izzy's headband. Izzy, the little girl outside the ring who dresses like Bayley and comes to all the shows, she stole Izzy's headband and stomped on it, leading to Izzy having to cry into her dad's shoulder. Her dad, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it was part of the show because the dad looked like he was about to laugh at it, but the little girl was really crying about it. But it added to the match, you know. Bayley did finally, drag herself back to the ring, so she wasn't counted out a second time. But Sasha slapped on a lion tamer and began kicking at Bayley's hand. Bayley didn't make it to the ropes, but when Sasha tried pulling her back, Bayley rolled her up at 17 minutes and 25 seconds to tie things up at 2. The fans began chanting "Better Than Raw," which is actually funny because until the main event, the show wasn't terribly great. It was very good, but it wasn't great. But it was still, of course, better than Raw for the most part. Sasha attacked Bayley's knee for minutes on end. So at one point, when they fought back outside the ring, Bayley slammed Sasha's hand off of the ring steps. Bayley pulled the ring steps out, ran up them, dove off them, and clotheslined Sasha on the floor. but then Sasha replied by throwing her back first into the steps. Sasha went into the ring and went for a suicide dive. But to show you how strong that Bayley is, Sasha went for a suicide dive. She was completely in the air, and Bayley caught her, didn't waver, didn't go to a knee. Bayley caught her and gave her a belly-to-belly suplex on the floor, and that got us down underneath 5 minutes. But by the time Bayley got Sasha back into the ring, Sasha recovered enough to kick out. Bayley then hit the belly-to-belly off the middle rope, but Sasha bounced across the ring, so when she hooked Sasha's leg actually ended up across the bottom rope, so it wasn't a fall. Corey Graves said his one stupid thing that he says on every show when he said, "Do you think Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels would have settled for a draw? They went to overtime." And actually, Corey, the storyline of the match and the storyline months and months later was Bret was more than happy to settle for a draw because he was the champion. But Gorilla Monsoon restarted the match. But anyway, fast forwarding back 19 years, Bayley hit the reverse Bayley Connorana off the top rope, but Sasha rolled through and landed on her feet, but Bayley didn't see it, so she gets her headband all straightened and ready to go for something. But she turns around, and Sasha immediately hits her with her own belly-to-Bayley suplex, which got so close to a 3 count. But Bayley kicked out. We hit the 2-minute mark, and Sasha locks on the bank statement. And Bayley is ripping and clawing to get to the ropes. And Sasha's just yanking her back. And, you know, it actually in this case would have been better for Charlotte, because Charlotte is like so skinny that she can touch her head back to the mat in that situation. But it was still great here as Bayley's reaching and grabbing and fighting to the ropes. But as soon as she got really close, Sasha rolled back in the middle of the ring, and it looked like Bayley was going to have to tap, but somehow she escaped with less than 40 seconds to go. Sasha went for another bank statement, but Bayley reversed it and locked on this brutal-looking cross-arm breaker, and she began pulling at Sasha's injured hand and pulling her fingers back from remember earlier when she slammed Sasha's hand there on the ring steps. Finally, with 4 seconds to go, Sasha had to verbally submit, and the clock ran out, and Bayley retained the NXT Women's Championship. An excellent final 20 minutes after a slow first 10 minutes, and as I predicted earlier this week on WrestlingObserver.com, that it was going to be a lot better. It was going to be the best WWE Iron Man match in history, and I think I'm right. After the match, both girls are exhausted. They're covered in sweat. Bayley looks like she's ready to collapse, and the entire NXT roster came out and stood on the ramp, including everyone who wasn't even on the show, and people you haven't seen in a month, like Sylvester Lafort was out there, and Tensai was out there. Sarah Del Rey was out there, and they all went out there. Sasha Banks like collapsed into Sarah Del Rey crying on the ground. And Stephanie and Hunter came out and gave them flowers. Hunter went to the ring to give Bayley her flowers, and Bayley collapsed crying into his suit jacket from just the emotion of the match, as the entire Full Sail crowd, except for one dick that they showed in the crowd, the entire Full Sail crowd giving him a standing ovation, and that's how the show ended. Bayley is something special. Sasha is something special. I just hope WWE, you know, when Bayley eventually comes up and, you know, going forward with Sasha, they don't mess them up, and, you know, they're given the chance to have these great matches that they can. And knock on wood, good luck to them. If it's not a must-see show, it's at least a must-see main event. Like, I'm not going to sit and force you to watch the first 90 minutes, even though I think you'd enjoy it. But at least go watch the main event. It's 30 minutes of your life. There are worse shows out there that you could be watching for 30 minutes. You could be watching SmackDown. Don't watch SmackDown. SmackDown, nothing happens on SmackDown. Watch this NXT show. And so that's that. And so now I'll take a big deep breath. And go to our other 2 weekend shows. Starting with the Madison Square Garden house show on Saturday. The show itself, it seemed like a complete waste of time. Like, even the Brock Lesnar match, it's like you knew what the Brock Lesnar Big Show match was going to be. It went slightly longer than I thought. I figured it was going to go 2 minutes. It went 4 minutes. But really, nothing happened in that show. Nothing was advanced. If you didn't see the show, you missed absolutely nothing. If you watched the show, you know, you were probably entertained for 2.5 hours. But that really was it. It really was just a house show that they plugged extra hard. They started with Randy Orton and Dolph Ziggler versus Sheamus and Rusev. There's supposed to be 2 different singles matches, but they merged it into one tag match. They, of course, got the heat on Dolph Ziggler until he got the hot tag to Orton. Ziggler super kicked Rusev off the apron. Sheamus attacked Orton from behind, but then Ziggler super kicked Sheamus into an RKO by Orton. Babyfaces won. After the match, Rusev yelled at Sheamus, calling him a stupid non-American, saying that he could have beaten both of them by himself, and said that Sheamus was as stupid and useless as Lana was. So Sheamus played out Rusev with a brogue kick, and I'd like to point out that none of this was followed up on Raw. Not that you really expected it to, but Dolph's moving into a program with Cena and the New Day, it looks like. Orton is still with the Wyatt family and the Shield. Rusev's doing nothing, and Sheamus is doing nothing. And that's that. Neville pinned Stardust. These two should be having much better matches than they do. Like, maybe I just have too high standards for these two guys. I don't think they're too high, but maybe I do. But I expect their matches to be so much better than they are. They never, like, they have good matches, but the talent of these two guys, you expect them to have great matches. You expect them to have, like, great, you must see, can't miss matches, and instead you get, but yeah. Neville pinned him with the Red Arrow. In the most head-scratching match of all time, Team Bella, the Bellas and Alicia Fox, defeated Team PCB, who were back together, even though Paige turned heel on them twice during the week. The Bellas and Alicia Fox won again, and the point of this was, for some reason, they were tagging, even though they didn't like each other, Paige, Charlotte, and Becky. Paige tagged herself in at one point, got into argument with Charlotte, so when Paige went to tag out, both Charlotte and Becky jumped off the apron and left, and then Nikki pinned Paige with the rack attack. Paige then cried after the match, not in the serious, I just had a very emotional 30-minute match way, but in a phony, hey, why did my friends who I turned on 5 times leave me way. Kevin Owens pinned Chris Jericho to retain the IC title. It's amazing. I know Jericho's a 9-time Intercontinental Champion, but like when you really think about it, like some of those title wins are just ridiculous. I remember they did the one thing where him and Chyna had a double pin, so they both were co-Intercontinental Champions, and then they count when he won the triple threat match with Chyna and Holly has an entirely new reign. And then another point, he beat Benoit on SmackDown and then lost the belt back to Benoit on Raw. He just, like, so many of those title reigns are just ridiculous. And it's more, he's has so much longevity, that's how he's got the belt 9 times, than anything else, to be fair. And I'm sure I'll get crap for this, but especially if you remember his last IC title reign that he got because Jeff Hardy failed a wellness test, you know, he did, actually it wasn't the last one, it was the next last one, but he got it because Jeff Hardy failed the wellness test and then did absolutely nothing as the Intercontinental Champion. Like, he started the Shawn Michaels feud, but that had nothing to do with the Intercontinental title. He lost the IC title just to get it off of him so he could continue the feud with Michaels. And that's when Kofi won the belt for the first time, as your trivia lesson for the day. This match was a fun 8 minutes. I think everyone and their mother expected it to go longer. It didn't. And Owens continued his gimmick of winning with an eye poke. The Dudleys beat the New Day by DQ. I think everyone and their mother were expecting a tag team title match. A tag team title change. I don't think anyone wanted a title change, but I think at that point we were all expecting it, and we didn't get it. They had the same exact finish as Night of Champions, where they had the match won, but Xavier Woods ran in for the disqualification. And, it was so similar right down to the post-match, where they then put Xavier Woods through a table, while the announcers were yelling about what hypocrites the New Day were for trying to pull out a table. Brock Lesnar pinned the Big Show. Here was the match. Big Show hit Brock Lesnar with 3 choke slams. Lesnar kicked out. He hit a couple German suplexes. He then picked up Big Show for the F5, but was losing him, so he gave him the wasteland. Show went for the knockout punch, but Lesnar gave him an overhead belly-to-belly suplex and an F5 for the win. After the match, he gave him another suplex, gave him another F5, and after Big Show got up to leave, for some reason, the ring announcer, who was, again, Eden Styles, tried to, she announced, "Let's hear it for the Big Show," which is like a babyface type thing, which the fans just didn't give a shit about. Then in the unadvertised main event, which was still by far the best match on the show, John Cena pinned WWE World Heavyweight Champion Seth Rollins to retain the United States title. Obviously, you knew when they announced it was a U.S. title match that what the result was, but it's still kind of ridiculous that the U.S. champion was wrestling the world champion, and it was the U.S. title that was on the line. It was a very good cage match, better than that Orton-Hunter match I watched a few weeks ago in a cage. And Cena won with an AA. Kane came down, laid out Rollins with a choke slam and a tombstone. And, Cena, you hear he's going away for a few weeks after Hell in a Cell, but it's he really was an afterthought in this whole thing. TNA. Bound for Glory. I've read reports that they sold 280 tickets to Bound for Glory. The show drew 1,800 fans total, but that was including all the free tickets given out. And I read that they were actually inviting people to come in while the show was going on. They were inviting people to go in for free. It's actually kind of funny in that, they only sold 280 tickets, but a few weeks ago I went on Ticketmaster just to see, how tickets were going. And I'd done that in the past. I remember a few years ago for the lockdown show in Miami, the day of the show, I went to Ticketmaster just to see where I could get a ticket for, and I was getting tickets in the first row ringside, But this show, 2 or 3 weeks ago, when I checked, the closest tickets I was finding were 7th row ringside, which I'm okay, good, they're selling tickets at a brisk pace. All that's showing me is that they did at least sell a lot of the main seats, but no other tickets, it looks like. So 280 paid. That's just, I'm sorry. There's no other word to describe it than pathetic. I'm sorry. It's the truth. The show opened with Ultimate X, Tigre Uno versus Manic, DJZ, and the debuting Andrew Everett, who was last seen, I believe, in ROH. This was an insane spot fest. And that if this happened on a TNA pay-per-view 3 years ago, it would be well remembered, much talked about. These four guys killed each other, almost literally, to get this match over, and it was just insane. Andrew Everett, the finish, by the way, Tigre Uno did a springboard 450 splash to the floor and dislocated his shoulder, so he's going to be out for a few weeks with that. But the finish saw Andrew Everett walk on the tightrope, walk on the Ultimate X thing, using the scaffolding above to guide him, and he's standing on top of the cables. And Tigre Uno guts it out. He comes over and knocks Andrew Everett off with the most insane bump you've seen in a very long time. I jumped out of my seat. I watched the show. By the way, I enjoyed the show, maybe because I didn't pay for it, but, I thought it was a very enjoyable 3 hours of wrestling. But Andrew Everett took the craziest bump of all time. Tigre Uno grabbed the belt, kept the belt, still the champion. Have no idea whenever he's going to defend the belt again, but, that's for another day to find out. And after the match, Gregory Helms came out and raised Tigre Uno's hand. We then got, after that, by the way, Ultimate X, I think, was the best match on the show. The one thing about Bound for Glory, when you look at the lineup, TNA put together a lot of matches that should have been really good. And so many of them didn't deliver. Like Bobby Roode and Bobby Lashley, they had 3 great matches last year, and then they come on here and nobody cared, and it was a flat match. Kurt Angle and Eric Young could have been a really good match. The main event could have been a really, really good match. And it's just like, it was like watching a promotion on its deathbed. And it's sad. Like, I had fun watching this show. I know some people didn't. That's their prerogative. And to be honest, if TNA ran shows that were more fun to watch, like this one was fun to watch for me, they'd be doing well. I wish them nothing but the best of luck. But, they're done for. It's sad, but it's true. Speaking of sad but true, the Bound for Gold Gauntlet match. This was something. They announced that, like with all TNA Gauntlet matches, it's Royal Rumble rules, and the last 2 people, it's a pinfall or submission match. And then halfway through the match, they suddenly announced that the last 2 could be pinfall, submission, or throwing over the top rope. They also announced earlier that the winner would be the number 1 contender for the World Heavyweight title, but then changed that and said that they could be the number 1 contender to any title they wanted, which came into the storyline later. So we had Mr. Anderson versus Jesse Goddard started. Eli Drake came out, and to show you how closely I follow TNA, every time I hear the name Eli Drake, I thought it was Camacho, because I know he was in TNA for 5 minutes, and I don't even remember what name he actually has in TNA. I don't even know if he still is in TNA, but it's not Eli Drake. Eli Drake, he looks like Alex Riley's twin brother. And it took me a minute to realize that it wasn't Alex Riley. Al Snow was in this thing. Was one of the most over people on the show. The Irish Thug, Aiden O'Shea, debuted. He has a good look, and it's another one of those things that if it was 3 years ago, he might have had a chance, but it's not, so he's debuting for a dead company. Robbie E. was in there. Mahabali Shira came in. He is shorter than the Great Khali. He is a worse dancer than the Great Khali, and he is a worse worker than the Great Khali. He got in the ring and was, oh my God, he was throwing these punches that were just looking horrible. He could not work. And then suddenly, in the middle of the match, he decided it was time to dance. And he started doing his dance. And if you haven't seen it, he crosses his arms and begins shaking them up and down while tapping his elbows. And he literally got everybody else in the match to stop what they were doing and do the little dance. They'd all come up, go to punch him, and he'd go, nope, 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 we must dance now. And he began dancing. The fans, upon watching this, booed. And eventually that finally ended, and Tyrus was next, Chris Melendez. By the way, didn't Eric Young win Chris Melendez's leg a few weeks ago? Tyrus was the monster. He threw out a shit ton of people. Tommy Dreamer came in wearing the polka dots as a tribute to Dusty Rhodes. I'm sure you've already heard the story 15,000 times that Dusty Rhodes wanted people to not remember those freaking polka dots. Dreamer got gassed while doing the flip-flop and fly. Abyss, I know Abyss is still in TNA. It was so weird seeing him come out because you don't think of Abyss as really a geek. Like, he's one of the few people who is kind of a serious guy in TNA, and here he is in the Geek Battle Royal. And at one point, Abyss and Tyrus were standing and facing each other, and the Pope decided that he was going to enter the match. The Pope, who is the color commentator in the number one contender to the world title gauntlet match, got in the ring, looked at Tyrus and Abyss, and then eliminated himself from the number one contender's battle royal. Nobody cared. The only time they cared during the entire match was they did two simultaneous Tower of Doom spots, with one on Tyrus, one on Abyss, and then Tyrus just threw Abyss out. By the way, early on, I expected Mahabali Shera to win because it looked like the whole match was set up for him to win, but he didn't. The final two were Anderson, who started the match, and Tyrus. Tyrus hit him with a chop to the throat and then fell on him, and that was it. EC3 came out. They hugged. EC3 brought up that, Tyrus isn't going to challenge for the X title, and he's not going to challenge for the women's title. And Tyrus said, he's not, but he's also not going to challenge for the tag titles with EC3. He wants to be the heavyweight world champion of the world, is what he wants to win. Can you imagine Tyrus though versus Gail Kim? That would be something. The Wolves, who have won the TNA tag titles like 5 times in a year and a half, retained the cursed belts, defeating Trevor Lee and Brian Myers. When they said Trevor Lee was 23 years old, I couldn't believe it because he looks older than that. And I know they mentioned in commentary that the reason why he grew his beard was because when he's clean shaven, people think he's a kid. I know how that feels, but I don't look a whole hell of a lot much older with my beard. But either way, Edwards and Davey won. This was a really fun match. And, this is why I enjoyed the show. There's a lot of good wrestling. Eventually the Wolves won with chasing the Dragon, Red Dragon's move with the brainbuster / kick to the head. And Richards pinned him. And during this match, all I could think was, why aren't Richards and Edwards, they're not even, it doesn't even appear like they're thinking of splitting them up and letting them do some single stuff. And, but then I realized they have no other tag teams. But they'd have no other tag teams whether or not Davey and Eddie were teaming or not. Bobby Roode beat Bobby Lashley to retain the King of the Mountain title. They set up what could have been a really good match, but it just didn't click. The crowd did not care, all 1,800 of them, 280 of them that paid to be there. They traded submission attempts. They gave each other their finishers. They gave each other's finishers at different points. And eventually, Bobby Roode won with the Roode Bomb, which is the FU, the AA, blah, 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 blah. One of the nicer moments of the show was the Earl Hebner Hall of Fame video package. it's sad. It really was one of the nicer things in the show. They had Billy Corgan out there, and they aired video highlights from his TNA career. They did use a still photo of him raising Shawn Michaels' hand at WrestleMania 12, which I imagine they probably got from PWI or something. A lot of people talked about how much they liked him, how he was a funny guy. Brian Hebner talked about what a great father he was, most of all. And the fans were very polite, reacted nicely. Gail Kim versus Awesome Kong. It's sad because when they announced this match, you knew the whole point was they wanted you to remember all those great Gail Kim Awesome Kong matches from 7 years ago. Awesome Kong, her back is in rough shape. She cannot do anything close to what she used to do, and it showed here. They went 10 minutes, which seemed a bit too long at times, and other times felt, a good amount. Chef Robert Irvine, who's Gail Kim's husband, was at ringside, and they used him for a little bit of heat there during the match. And Gail Kim eventually won by using Eat the Feet in the corner and then the biggest small package ever. I don't think Kong took a bump in this entire match. I could be wrong. I have to watch again. I know she did the big top rope splash, but I mean just like a flat back bump. I don't think you ever saw it. Kurt Angle versus Eric Young. In the first only in TNA moment, Christy Hemme announced this was going to be a no disqualification match. Then Eric Young and Kurt Angle came out. Kurt grabbed the mic and announced that he just talked to Dixie Carter, and this is going to be a no disqualification match. So the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. Early on in the match, like 2 or 3 minutes in, Eric Young gave Kurt Angle the pile driver. And, when you watched it, it was obvious it was just an angle. But at the same time, the way that they played it up, while you knew it was an angle, and you knew it wasn't really legit, you knew Kurt Angle's history with his bad neck. You figure, okay, this is maybe Angle really is really hurt. They announced this match and now just need to get out of it. So they were going to do the fake injury angle. They were going to get Kurt Angle out of there, and Eric Young was going to do some wacky promo or whatever. Instead, what happened, they brought a doctor out. They waved the match off. They announced it was over. The bell never rang, but, they kept saying the match is over. He can't continue. Eric Young, of course, ran over and beat up the railroad agents. He beat up the doctors, and then he dragged Kurt Angle back to the ring. On the way back to the ring, Kurt Angle was verbally submitting. He said, "It's over, Eric. It's over. The match is over. No more. No mas." Which, by the way, we saw a verbal submission tonight on NXT. You notice they didn't screw up that finish in NXT. But no, in TNA, they did this finish here. So they did a match. And I can't say they ignored the neck injury, but they went on like it never happened, really. And eventually Angle won with the ankle lock. Even though Angle lost the match early on, Angle still won in the end. And the crowd, again, didn't really care. That led to the main event, and I liked this whole thing a whole lot more until the recent crap with what happened afterwards. EC3 defended the world title against Matt Hardy and Drew Galloway. Jeff Hardy is the referee. And, I mean, it was obvious what was going to happen, that Matt Hardy was winning the belt. I kind of felt bad for Drew Galloway because up until 4 days before, the whole thing was built up for, he was going to win the belt, obviously. And then they decided last minute to throw Matt in, and, well, Jeff Hardy wasn't counting the win for anyone else. The match was quite good. I enjoyed it, but then again, I've been a Derek Bateman, Michael Hutter, EC3 fan. I have to be longer than anyone else. I mean, let's just face facts here. I'm the only person who watched NXT back in 2010. So, yeah, I'm going to take credit as being the longest-term EC3 fan. Drew Galloway's pretty good. Matt Hardy is usually good in these situations. Matt Hardy, by the way, cut a promo, one of the best things on the show, talking about how his whole family was there, including his father and his wife and his newborn son, and they were here to watch him win the world title. His brother Jeff had been world champion, but he'd never been world champion before. And so, Matt Hardy made this look interesting, made it look like it was important that he won the world title, and he did in the end. Of course, they did the ending with EC3 going after Jeff. Jeff gave him the twist of fate, but then so EC3 got knocked out, and then Matt gave Galloway the twist of fate and pinned him to win the title. EC3 did not get pinned to win, and Matt Hardy celebrated with his wife, with his son, with his brother, and with his father, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world than watching Bound for Glory. He wasn't really different in that regards, was he? And so that was it. EC3 left. He went backstage. He yelled at Aunt Dixie and threw John Geberk over a table. And the show ended with Matt celebrating the victory. Like I said, I enjoyed the show. I can see why others didn't. But, I had fun. And that's all that counts to me. And that, my friends, is everything I'm going to review. So, that's that. Like we said, next week, I'm going to be back with our special guest host to talk about TLC 2010. After that, later this month, we have Beach Blast 92. Also, Lauren's going to be with me 1 week. We're going to be doing bad wrestling movies. Actually, bad wrestling movie, singular, and a good wrestling movie, from what I heard. But we'll get into that and so much more in a few weeks. And then, of course, Brian's going to be back next month. I would say what show I'm forcing him to watch. This will be the time he actually listens to the show. But that's it from here. I want to thank everyone for listening. Like I said, check out Takeover, specifically the last, with the video package and the pre- and post-match stuff, the last 40, 45 minutes of the show is the good stuff that you really want to watch, but you won't be disappointed if you watch the whole show. But thank you for listening. Take care. Adios. And I'll see you again next Wednesday night at 10 p.m.
You're listening to Emerson Whitner's NXT Report on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.